everyone. I am Delilah. Thank you for joining me, for inviting me into your space. It's been some time since I've been here with you all, and goodness, it's been a whirlwind. The last time I was here was in December, and I feel like it's almost February already. We had a wonderful Christmas holiday. It was my newborn's first Christmas. My 3-year-old was just thrilled with all of the Christmas gifts from family and friends. I was thrilled, my husband was thrilled. It was a wonderful, wonderful holiday season. Shortly after the holiday season, all 4 of us, we get the flu in the first week of January. And this past Wednesday was my birthday, and so it was quite a bit going on, and managing our schedule, our time with 2 little ones, with both of our work schedules, with my husband's coaching schedule, it is a lot. But I am here, I'm excited to be with you all, and I wanted to share some practical tips. I would say 5 practical tips for new beginning knitters. If you are knitting for the first time or are interested in knitting, I have 5 tips for you that I would love to share with you. Tips that I wish I knew when I first started knitting, because when you walk into the door of the hobby of knitting, there's just so much information overload. You will be saturated with so much information, and to be honest, I grew a bit anxious, and there were times where I just had to shut my phone off and not do anything for some time. And picking knitting back up in this season, towards the end of last year, I had similar feelings, and I'm like, okay, something's gotta give. I need to sit down, really write out what I plan to do, what I want to do, because goodness, it just gets a little crazy. So I wanted to share with you today 5 practical tips as a new knitter, as a beginning knitter, however you'd like to say it. I know that these things would bring peace to your fun and exciting heart. I did want to share as well that this would kind of rein in a little bit of your excitement. If you're a planner, you would enjoy this. If you're not a planner, it might halt you a little bit. I find myself a little bit in between. As a planner and a non-planner, I am the adventurous one in our marriage with my husband, so I like to do a lot of fun things, impromptu things, spontaneous things, but he's the one that settles me with, counting the cost of all of those decisions. So without further ado, if you want to grab something cozy, a tea or a coffee, and you'll join me. Okay, so I will provide a bit of a bonus content after this, but I do want to start. One of the first things that I would suggest or encourage a beginner knitter is to buy a book. And the reason why I say to buy a book, because oftentimes you would scroll Instagram, scroll Facebook. You can join all of these knitting groups on Facebook. In fact, I think I'm a part of 2 groups on Facebook. I am following so many knitters, knitting companies, yarn companies on Instagram for inspiration. But so many people are doing so many different things, and you can easily get overwhelmed. And so without a doubt, I have shared in my last video that I am a book person. I love paper, I love books. So I would even suggest this one. It is Knitting for the Absolute Beginner by Alison Dupernix. And this is a gem in my library. It goes step by step with great pictures on how to do certain things. The first 2 stitches you need to know in knitting is stockinette stitch and purl stitch, or I should say the knit stitch and the purl stitch. It's literally the only 2 stitches you need to learn, and you can make sweaters and beanies and cardigans and shawls and scarves. There's so many different things that you can do simply with those 2 stitches. This book goes through all of that. It even goes through some of the mistakes that you will make. I highly recommend this. It's called Knitting for the Absolute Beginner with Allison Dupernix, and there's great pictures, great descriptions. There are also little notes to keep track of. If you can see here, I made a little tab. I've highlighted in here. This is one of the first things I would say. You may even be able to find something very similar to this in a fabric store near you, wherever they sell yarn. You can find it on our online purchasing stores like Amazon, thrift books. You may even find something very similar at a Goodwill or a thrift store near you. So that is the first thing I recommend, is getting a book for absolute beginners. As you go through, as you learn, as you grow as a knitter, there are some very, very good information there that would help you with your journey. The other thing, I would say number 2, as a beginner knitter, I would highly recommend asking a friend for a set of needles and a ball of yarn. And that's exactly what I did with these 2 pieces right here. This just so happens to be my favorite color, so it was just amazing that my friend had this extra. So one thing you could even ask a friend that you know that knits or crochet is hey, do you have stash yarn that I can use? If you want to say borrow, you're welcome to. And a set of needles. This is my first set of needles. They are a US 8 size 5 millimeters, and I asked her to borrow this, but of course with the kindness and as amazing as she is, she said that I can keep it. So this is what I'm gonna keep forever. So these aluminum set of needles and this ball of yarn, as I started knitting, I created a swatch. And you can see some of the mistakes that I've made. I have a hole here, there's a hanging stitch here. I absolutely love this cloth. I mean, you could end up using it as a coaster or a face rag or a little pot holder. You can put it underneath your candle. You could do so many different things with your swatches. But I made a swatch because this is kind of like my beginning, literally my first piece of fabric. A little note here, every stitch that you make, whenever you create something, you are creating a fabric. Whether it's knit stitch or purl stitch, you are creating a fabric. And so this is the first piece of fabric I've created. I see all of my mistakes now, knitting for some time, and I'm proud because every mistake you make, it's that fabric's identity. You kind of create something. You may even find pieces of hair in some of your fabric if you have a lot of hair like me. But this is my first piece of fabric that I knitted with this needle and this ball of yarn. I love this because then I can look at my sweater and see how far I've gone and see how much I've learned. So my number 2 tip as a beginning knitter is to ask a friend who knits or crochets, because some crocheters do knit as well, for a set of needles, some stash yarn, and with this book you'll be able to go a long way. So absolutely encourage you. The reason why I even say to ask a friend for the ball of yarn and the needles is because maybe this is a hobby that you want to try, but you just don't really connect with it, and that's totally fine. I absolutely fell in love with it. But then with just this and this that cost me nothing, I can literally go back to my friend and say, here, this is not something I'm interested in anymore. And it costs nothing to you. I do not recommend for you to get a whole set of interchangeable needles, the wooden ones, the aluminum ones, the steel ones, and all these cords, just because they are hundreds of dollars. Some of them are a bit cheaper. You can buy 1 or 2. But it beats this being for free. Number 3, if you do want to purchase yourself some, for example, if you enjoy knitting this piece of cloth and you're wanting to look into it a little bit more, I do encourage you to get 2 different types of needles if it's something that you're interested in. Wooden needles and aluminum needles. They both knit differently in the way of how it feels in your hands and how it pulls on the yarn. With wooden needles, these particular needles are the Takumi Bamboo. They're size US number 15, size 10 millimeters. The way that the yarn rubs against the needle is a factor in how much you would enjoy knitting. If you are sensitive to sound and certain sounds make you cringe, I know for me, it's rubbing a brush against rug. Don't know what it is, but it's rubbing a brush against rug that get me all cringy, or like nails on a chalkboard. That doesn't bother me very much, but depending on what cringes you or not, for the lack of better words, you can kind of get a set of wooden needles or a set of aluminum needles. There are some yarns that slip easily on aluminum needles. This actually feels very nice. And then you can try it against some wooden needles. So if you want to go ahead and try this at any of the Joann's, Michael's, Hobby Lobby, they do sell different types of material needles. You can kind of see which one you enjoy best. Right now, if you have watched my other video, which I would link below, I have driftwood needles that I enjoy very much. I do have a number of interchangeable needles that are bamboo like this that I enjoy as well, but I wanted to beef up my needles just so that I have a bit more option of what kind of things that I make, whether it's a beanie or a sweater. So I did invest in some driftwood needles, which I love, and I'm actually very curious about stainless steel tips, interchangeable needles as well. So I do encourage that. So number 3, I would encourage, if you're saying yes to this knitting hobby, to buy 2 different ones. It could be the same size, just so that you can have a feel for what you'd like as far as the way things are sliding on your needles. It has a huge part in your knitting journey, at least for me, it does. Number 4, I would say to always knit a gauge swatch. Whether you're creating a beanie, a sweater, or scarf for the first time, gauge swatches are so important. It teaches you so many things. It teaches you what kind of fabric you're going to create, how much stretch it's going to have, what the color actually looks like together in stockinette stitch. If you've never used the yarn before, like I have with this one, it was really hard for me to tell by just looking at the ball of yarn what it would create. So number 4, I would say and highly recommend creating a gauge swatch before you start a new project. And so with this particular gauge swatch, I was able to see what this would turn out to be. Some of you may say it's a time waster or a yarn waster, because you really can't do much with this after it's done, but it would teach you so much of your final piece of your final object. I've heard it said before, gauge swatching is the cheapest thing that you will, gauge swatching is the cheapest part of knitting your project, because imagine if you just go ahead and knit and this is wide or too long or it doesn't fit your head. What are you gonna do now with all of this that you have created? It'll kind of not be useful. So gauge swatching, totally recommend. I fight it as well, but I definitely would recommend or suggest number 4, always gauge swatch before you do your project. Number 5 is journal. Journal. I journal naturally, and so I had an extra journal that I opened up for my knitting journey. So for my daughter's beanie, as you can see here, I have that piece of yarn. I cut the label so that in the future, if I want to use a yarn like this, or if I want to revisit this, if I want to design my own beanie, which I would love to do one day, I have notes of what I did here, what I enjoyed, what I didn't enjoy, what I will do next time. If there are pieces where I may even want the bee need to be longer to have a bit of a larger hem? It all depends on what your journey was like for this particular project. You would journal it out here in this piece here. I hope this was very encouraging to you. The 5 steps or the 5 practical things as a new beginner knitter. I wanted to share a little bit of a bonus content with you, an update on my cinema sweater. I am so excited to show you all where I am with this sweater. I have worked quite a bit. The week that I was out for the flu, I did not knit at all. I was miserable, but I did get back on my needles and it's progressed quite well. So I did want to share what the yarns are. It is M1 yarns. Yes, M1 yarns, and it's the color Soft Bouquet, and the base is Riding on Air. 72% kid mohair and 28% silk. It is the lace weight. As you walk through this knitting journey, the thickness of the yarn is called the yarn's weight. So this is lace weight, meaning it's the thinnest yarn, and it's a very, very thin and fuzzy. So it is a lace weight. And then the other yarn that I have with 2 strands of fingering weight, it is from Lanes du Nord, and the color is Dolly Baby Extra Fine Merino Wool, a luxury line, and it is in the color 400. And so this is what it looks like for the fingering yarn that I hold with 2 strands, and then this is the label for the mohair silk that I'm using. Are you ready? I am so excited. The fabric has come out so beautiful. I'm even gonna put it on for you, but I still have it on my needles, and look how far I've gotten. It is absolutely gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. The collar in this part will be knitted down or sewed down together. So I'm gonna put it on for you. To show you realistically where I am. Okay, look how beautiful. Let me tuck this in. And when I wet block it, it's not gonna be as tight up because I think I'm gonna stretch this out just a little bit more. But look how beautiful it is. So I'm holding the Dolly Baby 2 times, and it is the fingering weight, if you can see how thin this is. So I'm holding 2 balls of fingering yarn in the Lanes du Nord Dolly Baby color 400. It is so soft, so delicious. And I'm also holding the lace weight silk mohair, and you can see how fuzzy it is. It is what's creating the fuzzy texture on this part of the sweater. So it does have different colors throughout. So you will see, obviously this is the pink color, but you will see a bit of a variety of color in here. So you might see a purple, you might see a red. It does have a golden fluff to it, and it is absolutely gorgeous. So as I am knitting, as I'm going through this journey, I'm learning so much. So this sweater is knitted as raglan seams, and the raglan seams are these seams part right here. And it is a bit of a larger setting sweater, so that there is a positive ease, meaning it is a little bit baggier than normal sweaters. This t-shirt is a negative ease because it kind of hugs me. When there's a positive ease, it's a bit looser and it kind of sits a little bit more baggier on your body. So this is a raglan seam sweater. It's called the Cinema Sweater from Veronika Lindberg on YouTube. She is Kutova Kika, and I love her so much. But I wanted to give you a sneak peek of my sweater and how far I've got along. I do need quite a bit, so I bought extra yarn this weekend at our yarn store locally here, and I am just so excited to continue going because I did run out of yarn, and I needed to buy more. So luckily, thank you, Vanessa, for holding the yarn for me and allowing me to knit the rest of the sweater. So write in the comments below what you think, your thoughts, my progress. I am just so excited about this sweater, and I am so glad that you're here to join me as I knit this sweater, as I go through this journey. So thank you so much for allowing me in your space, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.